Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hardware News Recap for the week. The next one will probably be shot on the road. We have a big travel episode coming up for a few things. Also, NVIDIA's N1 motherboard has been seen in the wild. That's for the upcoming laptop solution. AMD's 9950 X3D2 now has a price and release date. Additionally, Louis Rossman contacted me and asked if we might want to cover a story involving right to repair, and it was pretty interesting. It's in here. Further, Valve has a contractor who says that they've improved the VRAM utilization for devices, especially helping 8GB devices. Before that, this video is brought to you by Montech and the 10 Micro ATX case. The 10 is launching for Montech's 10-year anniversary and goes heavy on the mesh ventilation with a fine mesh front, side panel, and even heavily ventilated rear exhaust for the case. The case is an open slate for fan positioning and airflow, and also advertises 9 power supply positions, 3 motherboard positions, and 7 GPU slots across modes, which makes the case highly reconfigurable, giving you the ability to build a unique Micro ATX PC that gives more space than ITX, but doesn't take the footprint of ATX. Learn more at the link in the description below. All right, so first up, just a quick GN update, but we are about to embark on a huge adventure. We have a pretty major content piece coming up about the collapse of the PC industry. Not looking good. I mean, actually, like, the amount of companies that have contacted us and said, hey, we're down like 70%. Can we publicly tell everyone that? Is mind-blowing. It's really concerning when the amount of companies contact asking to talk about that have contacted us. So really interesting story though. We talked about the DRAM crisis and some of the impact of that situation. We'll also be going over some of the sales figures for the industry, a lot of transparency from the industry, a lot of layoffs too, unfortunately, including people that some of you in our audience have become familiar with in videos where we've interviewed or worked with those people over the years. So it's going to be a big series. We are traveling to California, so we're going to be in LA for about 24 hours, San Francisco for less than 24 hours, and then we're hopping over to Taipei to talk to a bunch of companies there, and then we're coming back. So it's gonna be a big one, a lot of travel, and for that we have a bunch of stuff planned going up, but we'll probably be shooting some stuff on the road too, so that'll be fun for everybody. If you want to support the upcoming trip and other ones that we have coming up for some of our deep dive research pieces, this particular one is going to be structured similar to our tariffs documentary, different subject though, similar structuring and interview format. We have a code on store.gamersnexus.net right now for 10% off while that code lasts. The code is PuckGamersNexus. That's right. We put that code back up for the video where we covered NZXT and Fragile having a preliminary settlement agreement to pay $3.5 million to people who are customers of the rental PC scam. We have a whole separate video on the channel covering that. That's a follow-up to our report from 2 years ago where it looks like it's resulting now in debt relief, payout, and computers for some of the customers. So anyway, you can go on the store and use the code PuckGamersNexus to tell us that we should go puck ourselves. And you can grab something like one of our PC building anti-static mod mats with wiring diagrams on them. We've been selling these for almost 10 years now, but we also introduced our silicone project and soldering mats, which after the mod mats became one of my personal favorite things that we sell because they are awesome work surfaces, extremely heat resistant and great for a lot of different types of projects. But also, we have our dice kits like our e-waste inductor dice and our Snowflake the cat dice and our new Retro IO coaster packs for your drinks. And of course, if you want something there too, we've got our copper-plated stainless steel mule mugs with thermal conductivity on the side of them. And microslop t-shirts with a BSOD logo, 2 event viewer icons, and Tux the Penguin. So anyway, that's all in the store. You can use the code for 10% off. And that supports us on this big trip we have coming up. Now, oil prices count with these manufacturers too, so we'll talk about that because they've been talking about the freight prices increasing as a result of the oil prices increasing. And even for us, I mean, I saw when we were booking the tickets to fly out there, it was like, holy shit, the cost to just sit on an airplane now, which is already torture, is now significantly more expensive. So anyway, a lot to talk about there. Next one, video cards spotted what appears to be an engineering sample of an NVIDIA N1 laptop solution, the motherboard specifically, and it was a posting on a Chinese second-hand online store, Goofish. As reported on before, NVIDIA had previously talked about working with MediaTek to produce a new SoC based on ARM. According to the imagery, the board supposedly offers 128 gigabytes of LPDDR5X memory across 8 memory packages, which are branded SK Hynix. Let me get this right. H58G78CK8B. That can't be right. That's a monitor name. But anyway, back in February, the Wall Street Journal reported that this NVIDIA MediaTek chip collaboration would soon make its way into Dell and Lenovo laptops. Quote, people familiar with NVIDIA's supply chain said PC makers, including Dell Technologies and Lenovo, were working with the chip maker on models using the NVIDIA MediaTek system on a chip, which is built on architecture from UK chip designer ARM. The first PCs with the chip could come in the first half of this year, end quote. Now, NVIDIA has talked about the MediaTek relationship actually publicly, so it's not a secret. They've also hinted at, I don't remember which keynote it was, but that they would have a large announcement for, it sounded like Computex of this year, which would line up with this. So Computex is a little over a month away. So we'll hear more about that soon if that's what the plan is. Up next, some hard news. AMD has announced the price and release date for its 9950 X3D2 Dual Edition, as they call it, CPU. This was announced back in March. We already talked about the specs of it back then. But word has it that the company had to put off announcing the price and the release date because they needed to leave space on the calendar for the name of the CPU to line wrap the calendar a couple times to then put the next announcement on it. The M5 processor is coming out on April 22nd and will retail for $900. Like the 9950 X3D before it, the 9950 X3D2 is a 16-core, 32-thread part, but it stacks 3D V-cache onto both chiplets, which it uses to increase the L3 cache from 128 megabytes up to 192 megabytes. In terms of other specs, the 9950 X3D2 has an advertised max boost clock of 5.6 gigahertz and a 200-watt TDP. Primarily, this simplifies the prioritization of which chiplet is used for tasks because they're the same now. So that's kind of the main upside for that. Extra cache may help in some workloads, but for the most part, this is going to simplify the chiplet selection during processing. So we may be able to test it, but we'll see. In the latest slew of price increases over the past month in particular, following the PlayStation and a bunch of other stuff for RAM and SSDs, of course, Microsoft has now increased its Surface PC prices. Windows Central reported on this, publishing price hikes up to $500 and citing RAM prices as the reason. In a table released by the publication, the 13-inch Surface Pro is shown as increasing from $1,200 in 2025 to $1,500 now for the same spec. This is for a computer with 16 gigabytes of memory and 512 gigabytes of storage, which is a massive slap in the face for that spec. The 12-inch Pro went up from $800 to $1,050, with the 13-inch non-Pro going from $900 to $1,200 at just 256 gigabytes of storage, all of these on Snapdragon SoCs. The 13.8-inch laptop increased to $1,500 from $1,200, with the 15-inch option increasing from $1,500 to $1,600. If things weren't getting expensive enough, ASUS is also increasing the price on its RX 9070 XT GPUs, which they barely ever hit MSRP anyway for those. So we published a video, I think it was called Fake MSRP, on AMD's MSRP situation when those cards launched, and it is continuing to be true a year later now. But anyway, we first spotted this story on video cards and went looking into it a bit deeper. It's pretty simple though. Looking at PC Part Picker's pricing history, turns out there's not much depth. The tough RX 9070 XT OC used to be $850 on ASUS's site, but it now retails for $990, an increase of over 16%. I guess the tough stands for tough it out at these prices. Next up is the Prime RX 9070 XT OC, which was going for $800 according to PC Part Picker, but is now $940, a 17.5% increase. Finally, there's the Prime RX 9070 XT White OC, which went for $730, but presumably to pay for the ink on the box forming the name of the product is now $960. An almost 32% increase. ASUS didn't give any reason for the increase in prices, but we can take a pretty good guess. I'm going to go with silicon, VRAM, inflation. the cost of putting your products on a plane or a boat, getting them somewhere. I don't know, probably one or all of those. Up next, speaking of price increases, helium is an essential gas for semiconductor manufacturing and balloon animals. Ask Paul from Paul's Hardware to make you one. I'm serious. He can do that. Ask him in his comments. Ask him to make more balloon animals. Tell him that I sent you. Anyway, other than Paul's Hardware's balloon animals, helium is useful for making semiconductors. Our understanding is that it's primarily captured as a byproduct during the liquefaction of natural gas. Roughly a third of helium and about 20% of LNG come out of the Strait of Hormuz, which is having an impact on Taiwan and TSMC. If you haven't heard, the Strait of Hormuz was blockaded, and then the United States blockaded that blockade. They blockaded the blockade of the blockade. And so now the only question is who's blockading the blockade of the blockade or blockading the blockade? With the US and Iran currently in a ceasefire, but not really, and frankly, by the time this goes live, who the fuck knows? And we're not going to change this section because if we do, it'll just change again. So maybe not a ceasefire. The Taiwan Semiconductor Industry Association, which TSMC is a key member of because, they're Taiwan Semiconductor, basically. The association is calling for resources to be stockpiled. Regarding helium and liquefied natural gas, TSIA Chair and TSMC Vice President Cliff Ho stated that they, quote, need to pay attention to midterm and long-term uncertainties, end quote. Ho also stated, quote, we also propose to the government that we need to keep diversifying sources of energy and critical material supplies to prepare for the uncertainties, end quote. Nikkei Asia reports that Taiwan, quote, currently has about 11 days of strategic liquefied natural gas supplies, which is the fuel used by more than 40% of its power plants, and no helium stockpiles, end quote. The TSIA chair also called for Taiwan to reopen its nuclear power plants for more energy sources, stating, quote, the association also supports the government's decision to reopen nuclear power plants to have more stable energy supplies if the processes meet legal requirements and if safety is guaranteed, end quote. Other than the fact that all of this stuff is awful, on the consumer side, this obviously will also lead to increased prices and more restrictions on access to things that you buy. Up next, some good news. Wait. No, I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry. I'm so sorry. That's a little, that comes in a couple more stories. There is some good news, though. There's two. Good news is that the plural? Anyway, Texas and data centers. Back in 2013, Texas passed a bill that gave data centers tax exemptions. At the time, the cost was relatively small, with the Texas Tribune reporting that from 2014 to 2022, these exemptions amounted to anywhere between $5 million and $30 million. With the modern AI data center boom, however, tech companies have used that to their advantage. Texas is poised to become the leading data center state with 300 operating data centers and over 100 in development. This is also the state with well-documented power grid issues, particularly during storms. Now, the Tribune writes that, quote, Texas will lose out on $3.2 billion in sales tax revenue over the next 2 years, end quote, as a result of this pre-AI policy. The publication noted that this amount is enough to, quote, pay for the entirety of the state's new school voucher program, end quote. But that's the problem. Why have schools when you can make the kids pay for a ChatGPT subscription for the rest of their lives and, publicly subsidize the data centers through the taxes that they're going to pay until they die? Why would you do it any other way? By 2030, data center tax breaks are predicted to amount to roughly $1.8 billion annually in Texas alone. In New York, Micron has received about $5 billion in tax breaks, while normal people struggle to buy homes. Now for Texas, these sales figures are based on the fact that qualifying data centers are exempt from the state's 6.25% sales tax, and this includes costs pertaining to cooling systems and electricity. Not sure if you've heard, data centers use a lot of cooling systems and a lot of electricity and also consume a lot of water. So this obviously is a big break for them. The vast majority of the public is against expansion of data centers. According to a poll that we recently saw, 65% of adults responding say they are opposed to the construction of AI data centers within their communities. Even former Texas Representative Harvey Hildebrand, who authored the original bill to give data center exemptions, suggested the state should revisit it, saying, quote, if I were on the committee still, I would certainly be looking at it to get a balanced perspective of what the benefit has been and how it compares to other costs of the state for other benefits we've had, end quote. Up next, a Colorado bill moving forward that will limit right to repair. Louis Rossman actually contacted us the other day to inform us about this bill moving forward in Colorado. So there's a bill moving through Colorado's state legislature which seeks to weaken the public's right to repair. SB 26-090 is a bill titled, quote, exempt critical infrastructure from right to repair, end quote. According to Wired, it aims to exempt information technology equipment, quote, that is intended for use in critical infrastructure from Colorado's consumer right to repair laws, end quote. The bill is backed by companies like Cisco and IBM, which cite cybersecurity reasons for why it should pass. This, of course, as opposed to the actual reason it should pass, which is money. The reason is money. That's literally the only reason that companies want anything to pass. Anyway, the core of the issue is that a consumer's right to repair products could actually be limited by this, even though it's framed as something relating to critical infrastructure. And so, first of all, we won't even get into how that's kind of just ridiculous anyway, but it's really the definition of critical infrastructure or critical devices that is the problem here. So from what we understand, to be critical infrastructure as a product, you declare that you are critical infrastructure as a product. It is a declaration. It's kind of like this declaration.
I declare bankruptcy!
Per the Consumer Rights Wiki, which Louis Rossman maintains, we found this quote. Quote, the bill defines critical infrastructure as systems and assets, whether physical or virtual, so vital to the United States that the incapacity or destruction of such systems and assets would have a debilitating impact on security, national economic security, national public health or safety, or any combination of those matters. And subquote, the quote continues, this language comes directly from the USA Patriot Act of 2001 and was later incorporated into Presidential Policy Directive 21, PPD 21, issued by President Obama in 2013, end quote. The Repair Association came out against the bill and stated, quote, I can point out at least 5 problems with the bill as drafted. The definition of critical infrastructure is completely inadequate. The definition that has been proposed in this bill is not even a definition, end quote. When I asked Louis if he could summarize it for me, he said this, quote, critical infrastructure is determined by the manufacturer. If they declare a toaster is critical infrastructure, it's critical infrastructure. Cisco and IBM paid for it, mostly Cisco, end quote. I'm also just gonna say, look, Louis gave us the toaster analogy because he knew he was talking to me. Probably he could think of about a million things that are far more vulgar than that as analogies for his channel. So we got the clean cut. We got like there's no parental advisory warning sticker on this Louis Rossman quote. I gotta say, Louis, next time you can really open it up for us. It's okay. This is a safe space. I mean, at least we'll both be banned by YouTube at the same time. Anyway, iFixit CEO Kyle Wiens suggested that it's being pushed by corporate interests. Quote, there's a general principle in cybersecurity that obscurity is not security. The money that's behind the scenes, that's what's driving the bill, end quote. Currently, the bill has moved out of the committee and still needs Senate and House approval to move forward. There's a lot more to say about this one, but actually, as we were looking into this, we decided this kind of looks like a full separate video to us. There's a lot to talk about here, and we'd like to do it justice and begin actively looking at some of the connections and links relating to the bill and produce a full follow-up piece. So not sure when that's going to be with the travel. This will also probably involve travel, but for now we wanted to get on your radar, and we'll start looking at this for a larger story. Up next, Natalie Vach, we're getting into some of the good news stories now, says she's an independent contractor working with Valve and claims that she's improved the gaming performance with VRAM specifically on Linux, which should particularly benefit 8GB GPUs and below. To address VRAM usage on Linux, she leveraged Linux C groups, a kernel feature that groups processes together and allows the system to prioritize resources. In this case, that means prioritizing games over less important background applications. This led her to co-develop the DMEM C group controller. With it, she says, quote, the kernel now learns about memory protection. Memory being protected merely means that the kernel will go to significant lengths to avoid evicting that memory. For example, it may try to find memory from a different C group that is not protected and evict that instead, end quote. According to VOC, this enables the more efficient VRAM allocation for gaming purposes, stating that it allows the game to use, quote, pretty much every last byte of VRAM for actual gaming purposes, end quote. She also noted that this prioritization is dynamic and can give priority to whatever application is in the foreground. The improvements should benefit more modest GPUs in particular, with VOC suggesting that many modern games still fit within roughly 8 GB of VRAM when memory is managed properly. VOC says she believes it should work across Intel and AMD GPUs, writing, quote, AMD GPU and XE both have support for the DMEM C group controller already, end quote, but was less sure about Intel's cards, adding, quote, in theory, Intel GPUs running the XE kernel driver should benefit as well, although I'm not sure if anyone tested this yet, end quote. This fix won't work on NVIDIA GPUs, however, with VOC writing, quote, the proprietary NVIDIA kernel modules do not support DMEM C groups yet, so this won't work there, end quote. To try out the fix, the author says users, quote, need some kernel patches as well as additional utilities to make use of the kernel capabilities properly. The simplest option is to use Cache OS with KDE as your desktop, end quote. Cache OS was actually one of the ones we got the most suggestions or requests to try. We ultimately used Basite for that round of testing. We spoke with Wendell about it, kind of pulled the audience, and that was the direction everyone went. Cache is definitely on our radar, though, as well with Basite. So maybe that's something we look at. It's not going to be immediate, though, just, again, because of all the stuff we got going on, but that is one we're interested in as well. We've quite a few reviews going on right now, though. This could be particularly useful, though, as consumers remain stuck on older cards for longer and as VRAM continues to get expensive. Up next, another mostly good news story here, where, as spotted by Tom's Hardware, the South Korean government has developed and is implementing new initiatives to help people with computer affordability in the wake of rising costs, especially for DRAM, which is a large part of the industry of Korea, with 2/3 of the memory suppliers being located there, the big ones anyway. Tom's Hardware cited the Korea Herald and No Cut News in its report. According to the Korea Herald, South Korea will reuse and donate more computers that it had previously junked. The outlet said the government had discontinued 22,000 computers last year and scrapped more than half of them, although the systems could have still been used for performing simple computing tasks. As part of its initiative, the South Korean government will also help students from low-income families afford personal computers with additional subsidies from a forthcoming budget. Seoul Economic Daily said the increased subsidies amount to 4.8 trillion won, which is somewhere around 3.2 to 3.5 billion USD. The Korea Herald, interestingly, explained the government's actions are, quote, part of a broader set of countermeasures announced at a minister-level meeting focused on stabilizing consumer prices as global prices for dynamic random access memory, widely used in desktop and laptop computers, have risen, end quote. The English edition of the Chosun Daily, which is a Korean newspaper, said that the South Korean government expects memory prices to stay heightened for a, quote, considerable period, end quote, and the government said PC and laptop prices have increased by more than 10% over the last 7 months. Despite the government's actions, several South Korean companies are benefiting mightily from the global AI data center build-out. South Korea is home to 2 of 3 primary memory manufacturers. Samsung and SK Hynix have more than 2/3 of the global DRAM market share as well, as of the last quarter in 2025. We like seeing at least some recognition at the policy level of the lack of affordability for normal people, and trying to do something to help that for people who most need the help. Of course, the South Korean government has also subsidized and supported for years its semiconductor manufacturing company with many billions in subsidies, so it kind of cuts both ways. Up next, Brazilian modder and YouTuber Paulo Gomes has this was a pretty cool video actually, managed to resurrect an MSI RTX 4090, but at 20 gigabytes of memory instead of 24. Still better than no 4090 though. Paulo believes the card was damaged due to GPU sag. Its major downside, and what makes it interesting, is that it does have 20 gigabytes of memory now instead of 24. Gomez pointed out how parts of the PCB were damaged, including circuitry affecting the card's PWM fan control. Because the GPU lost control of its fans, he wired them directly to a 5-volt line to keep them spinning at a constant speed. The biggest issue involved the VRAM. Physical traces connected to one of the memory channels were destroyed. To work around this, according to Tom's Hardware, just because we don't understand the language it's in, I think it's Portuguese, Gomez flashed a modified BIOS that disables the faulty channel, which reduced the available VRAM. The creator also rerouted the damaged 12-volt and 5-volt power rails using jumper wires to restore functionality. Pretty cool. To prove he got it working again, he booted it up, ran it with GPU-Z and superposition, and showcased the card with 20 gigabytes of memory. And for our last good news story of the week, that's right, at least 3 of them, maybe 4 depending on how you count some of these. It's been a long time since NASA sent astronauts to, or really near the moon, and Artemis 2 did it. But there was one important story that came out of the Artemis 2 launch that didn't get enough coverage. While its launch was exciting to watch, the real interesting part was when they were trying to get Microsoft Outlook to work. While the Artemis 2 astronauts got a great view of the Earth and Mars, the Outlook on Outlook wasn't so great. Artemis 2 Commander Reed Weissman reported an issue with Microsoft software. On a call with Missions Control in Houston, he stated,
"And I also see that I have 2 Microsoft Outlooks, and neither one of those are working. If you want to remote in and check Optimus and those 2 Outlooks, that would be awesome."
And of course, because we're very serious reporters, Gamers Nexus had a cameraman in NASA Mission Control to capture the live reaction. Here it is.
Fuck Microsoft!
Okay.
Fuck!
Honestly, I love that has become canon now. Like, it's no longer just a TV show. It's like, that actually happened. I genuinely, sincerely hope that people at NASA, when they got that call, I hope they said it. I hope they're like, fuck Microsoft! Fuck! Anyway, that's it for this one. Subscribe for more. You can go to store.gamersnexus.net and use code PUCKGamersNexus. And the next one should be Puck Microsoft to help us out directly. And patreon.com/gamersnexus if you want to go there. We'll see you all next time.